you playing?
Hello, and welcome to What the Bleep Are You Playing? A podcast where we play a game, sometimes good, and tell you why the bleep we played it. I am Shawn the Dragon. This is Ganasty Gatamas and Mason the Dragonfly. And we played... Spyro the Dragon. How you guys doing?
I get it, because I'm the fat fuck.
I don't know why that one really got me.
So, this is my final game of the season. This is one of, like Andy, my final game last season, this is one of my top 5 games of all time. So, I very much am happy to talk about this game because I have great affinity for this game. Whereas I think you guys both have a closer feeling towards Crash Bandicoot. This was my PlayStation cartoony mascot.
Yeah, up until recently, I knew next to nothing about Spyro. I knew it was a thing that is a thing, and that's really about it.
Spyro has always been... Look, I think it's out of the three of us, I'm the 3D platformer guy. I go out of my way to play a shit ton of 3D platformers.
And then tell us to play them.
Yeah. Until recently, Spyro has always been a big check mark on my list that I've just never crossed off. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is about the franchise. I have just never been compelled to play it. So.
Well, I think there's a couple of things from the beginning. It is very similar in tone to Crash Bandicoot. Maybe not as many dark things, but it is very much Looney Tunes goofiness-esque to it. Not quite as... I think there are differences to it, but it is very important to have the goofy nature of it.
Oh, yeah. See, for me, whenever comparing Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, I always came to the comparison of Looney Tunes and Disney.
That's fair. That's fair.
Disney still has that wacky, zany bullshit a lot of the times, and I'm saying that as a positive. But in the end, it's more trying to tell you an adventure story. It's more trying to tell you a journey. Mm-hmm. Looney Tunes just kind of wants to make you laugh and possibly tell a story. That's Crash Bandicoot. Spyro is Disney. That's kind of where my comparison went to.
Actually, I like that one better. I think that really well. But they are, despite being kind of tied at the waist a lot of the ways, so much so that the same character designer designed Spyro, like the characters and the dragons, and Naughty Dog and Insomniac had offices across the hallway from each other and literally, worked with each other, put the demos of the games on each other. I think it was Crash Warped.
Yeah, Crash 3. Yeah, Crash Warped.
And Spyro had demos on vice versa of them, so... Mm-hmm. They are very, very close together, and then they were both sold off by their company or licenses it with their company, and Universal Activision now has them both.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you exactly why I've missed out on Spyro for so long is because
you don't have a PlayStation.
Well, the thing is, I did have a PlayStation. I had a PS2, but I was like 5, so I barely knew what a video game was, and then by the time I had kind of become cognitively aware of what video games are, we got a 360, and I became a Microsoft whore from there on out, pretty much.
And the Spyro games that would be on the 360, which I think I would like to visit. I've actually, after the PlayStation trilogy and one Game Boy game that I didn't like, I kind of was done with Spyro. I would like to visit the GameCube/360 trilogy that came out, but the quality, in my opinion, had dipped to a level at that point that, I can imagine not necessarily stepping your foot out if you didn't have prior connection to them.
Right, and even then, Spyro just was never as big as he was when he was a PlayStation.
Oh, absolutely.
Solo thing. So yeah, apart from like the odd Nintendo console, I was a Microsoft whore. And then when the Insane Trilogy and the Reignited Trilogy came out, Insane Trilogy was the one that I gravitated more towards.
And I think we when if it's a plug for a different podcast, the How the Bleep You Do It, which over on our Patreon we did a Crash Bandicoot, how we would make a movie on it. Crash Bandicoot, and one thing coming out was Crash Bandicoot was everything in the 90s. Spyro was not that. Now, was Spyro big? Yeah, it sold well. It was reviewed well. It was a big hit. It was one of the mascots, but it's kind of the same way as, like, people know what Samus is, or they know who Star Fox is, but they don't associate those necessarily with the system, or those aren't the big sellers all the time.
Compared to Mario.
Compared to Mario, yeah. Or Link, or even Donkey Kong. Like that they're kind of, Spyro was top tier, but it was still it was not Crash Bandicoot in terms of marketability, mascot level character that Crash was.
It's very funny that they would kind of swap places with their next trilogy, because Ratchet, that was the one that was everywhere.
Yes.
Ratchet and Clank just took over the fucking world, and Jak and Daxter was just kind of on the sidelines.
And I think that might be some of it also for that. It was also the Ratchet and Clank game. The Ratchet and Clank games were
Ratchet and Clank.
Some of the best reviewed games of the entire PS2. Especially some of them were, you were just getting 10s, whereas Jak was like 8s, 8.5, 7.5, things like that, where it was like really good, but like everyone's like, yeah, this is really good, but have you played this 10 out of 10 game?
Yeah, right. Which, if we're talking Insomniac's history, that's the series that I like out of this. Ratchet and Clank was the one I gravitated towards. All of one game I've played of it, but that's more than until recently. That's more than I'd played of Spyro.
And that's, I think, you can see Spyro in the Ratchet and Clank games. You can see the humor, the style. Whereas kind of Jak and Daxter was, while it's still goofy, it was Naughty Dog trying to be a little more serious with their stuff. And a little more, like, doing a little bit more serious story, but not being as goofy. Ratchet and Clank is still very similar in tone to Spyro. Like, Insomniac had a style that they really stuck with.
Insomniac still has a style. Like, yeah, they do their Spider-Mans, and probably their Wolverines are going to be different, but outside of those games and Resistance, their games have been very similar in tone.
It's also kind of crazy that Spyro got made because Insomniac it was their second game. It was big, and their first game, Disruptor. Raise your hand if you can remember that game. Very few, because it was a commercial failure.
Yeah, it reviewed well, but it sold like ass cheeks.
And they kind of moved, because Disruptor was a first-person shooter.
Yes. And
they moved into the platform world. And I think what's really interesting for Spyro the Dragon is it kind of is that Mario world feel that you're in one hub world, you run around with lots of little worlds to it. The difference in this versus, say, Mario is there's worlds, and then there's the hubs, and then the levels. And so, you have lots of different worlds that are different designs, whereas Mario kind of is one area that you kind of move from different spots to.
Yes. Right.
But it adds that. So it has kind of that open feeling without being an open world game.
Something I appreciate about this game is actually that the hub worlds still feel like levels.
Yes.
That's something that I think Mario Sunshine got, but Mario 64 really didn't. Mario 64, aside from the occasional puzzle, it was you walk around. And that's fine, but with Spyro, the hub worlds themselves feel like levels.
Yes.
Yeah, there are dragons to find. There are dragon eggs to find.
The thing that's interesting about the hub worlds, and I think that's, a really good place to start on just talking about the game, is those worlds are always your tutorial for what that world is going to be like. Sometimes there's little differentiation. So, like, in the Peacekeepers world, you'll have an ice level in there, and there's no ice in the main hub world. Yeah. But all the enemies are similar. All the skills that you're going to need are very similar based to that. The best example of that is the second to last world, the Dreamweaver's world, where that hub world is fucked up. It's weird. It's got all your enemies being changed into different things that you can't attack, or they changed into all right, if they're big, you can't charge them. If they're small, you have to charge them. If these ones, when they're big, you cannot attack. If they're small, you can. Like, there's a lot of magic and weird things you have to do, but then it falls into every one of the levels, which are weird and lots of different design things that you have to incorporate in. It's a way to show, hey, this is kind of those things you're going to be having, skills you're going to have to need for each of the levels in it.
Yeah, it's a very well-designed game.
Yes.
Let's get that out of the way. This game is pretty brilliantly fucking designed.
Yeah.
In terms of not even just the level design, I mean like the progression. Like, it goes so far until, like, say the first boss is very simple. You're just kind of wandering around, lighting his ass up.
I mean, look, Toasty is my favorite boss of all time. Not because he's easy, but because he looks menacing, and then you burn him, and it's just a sheep on stilts, and that is the funniest thing to me. He's this menacing scarecrow with a scythe, and you burn him twice, and then it just all goes up in flames, and he's just a sheep on stilts running, and I love him.
That is really funny.
Yeah, but then that progresses until the final boss, Gnasty Gnorc, and where you're, zooming along. You have to find keys to unlock basically the entrance to his final fight. You have to chase after him and light his ass up at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And then when you unlock the second part, you have to be able to go do serious platforming
Yes.
to get through, because you're on a time limit. Which the recent playthrough that I did with it, when I got to the second part, I forgot that I had to go fast, and I get like halfway, and I'm like, wait, are these things going in? Oh no, I cannot, oh no.
See, I didn't realize it was on a time limit, but luckily I went fast anyway, so by the end of it, I have like this much, like the width of this fucking microphone left. So I just imagine Spyro like shimming over on his hind legs, like shit.
Couple of interesting things, gameplay wise. the first thing that was interesting is that Thomas, you played on the PlayStation 2 too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know I played on the PS2 as well, and I was playing with the PS2 controller. And as I was playing it, I was like, I had a realization that was like, this is a PS1 game. This isn't the controller that it was meant for. That would have to be hell trying to play a 3D platformer like this with a D-pad, right?
But the good news is, by the time it was developed, 1998, the joysticks were all a thing now. For you could get the DualShock controller at that point.
You could.
Yes.
I thought, okay. See,
The PlayStation had the D-pad for the first couple of years, and then you got the DualShock controller. And so I think that was 97 is when the DualShock controller came in. It might have been in late 96, but 97 I'm pretty sure is when it came. The DualShock became a thing, and so this game 98 would have been designed with the DualShock in mind.
I could have sworn the DualShock didn't come until the PS2.
Nope. It was definitely PlayStation 1, because I owned only I didn't know that there weren't DualShock, because I had a DualShock, and then I had Mad Catz controllers, because
oh god,
that's what you had.
It had.
And then I went over to my cousin's to play, and we were hanging out, and he had his PlayStation, and his was a Gen 1, like first PlayStation that came out, and I had the controller, and it didn't have the DualShock on it, and I was like, what is this? So yeah, that was something they developed quickly because of this Nintendo 64.
Well, it had to, the Ape Escape came out on the PS1, and that literally required an analog controller. RC Stuntcopter came out on the PS1, that literally required the analog controllers.
Okay, so the DualShock would have been out at this time. Why doesn't the left analog stick control the camera?
Because
that's just something
because we don't know if everyone had one. Mm-hmm. It wasn't packaged with the console. We didn't know if everyone would have
The
one.
other thing is, also, if you play a lot of PS1 games that are those, we weren't to the moment to mapping the other analog stick to the camera. That still was it is weird to realize when you realize that it's R1 and R1 and L1 for the camera.
It's R2 and L2.
Or is it R2 and L2? Whichever one. Yeah, it's R2 and L2 is for the camera. But that is how a lot of platformers were made at that time.
Yeah, that's how Gex 2 and 3 were.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I would have appreciated the option, I guess. The other interesting control thing for me was that There are two different attacks that you get when you play. You can spray fire with square, right? Or no, circle. And then with square, you can charge it.
Yeah.
You can charge ahead, and you can run across. I found Spyro easier to control while I was charging than when I wasn't. So everywhere I would walk around, I would be charging.
I'm always charging, just in general. Yeah. The interesting thing is, because of kind of that mechanic, that the Insane Trilogy actually ups the speed.
The Reignited?
Sorry, yeah, the Reignited Trilogy actually ups the speed just a little bit, so that you're moving faster all the time. You are moving a little bit faster, and the charge a little bit faster, so everything's a little bit, because there is that feature of it's easier to control Spyro by a little bit. I don't think he's hard to control there, but he is meant to be running a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's meant to be running around at the speed of... Wait, wrong game.
It's almost like he's a child. He's just running around.
Yeah.
Which I think is the funniest thing about this game. And we can get more into gameplay stuff and all this sort of thing. But the funniest thing about the story of this game is it is basically some dragons went on television and insulted Nasty Nork, and he's like, "Hey, don't do that!" And freezes them all.
Fuck you.
Which I actually do like that the Reignited trilogy adds one more line of dialogue into the opening that is not in the original game, and that is that Nasty Nork has developed the ability to turn gems into monsters. That's added in the Reignited trilogy. It's not in the original line, but I could pretty much quote the opening dialogue. I've seen it so many times because it was on the demo disc that we had and we played that. And then obviously I've played the intro worlds to Spyro thousands of times.
So the interesting thing, and this is something I'm just now realizing about that opening cutscene. How did Spyro not get hit?
Because he's so tiny.
He's I think in the lore he's the only child dragon right now.
Plus,
the eggs, because he's the only one. Everyone either was slightly older than him, has grown up to the full size. The beam is for the full size dragons, and they're waiting on the eggs to hatch. So anyone that is not Spyro was stolen. The eggs were all stolen.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite bits. I think I might be misremembering this, but Spyro is like they freeze all the dragons, and Ganassi and Orc's like, no one can stop me. And then the camera pans down to Spyro, who's just in his own little world, and then he looks up like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So Spyro was a preemie baby, is what you're saying?
I think it's just more that like he was at a different time. Everyone was born before him, or maybe he hatched late. He's a runt. I don't remember the exact lore, but yeah.
I always took it as Spyro was just run of the litter.
Yeah.
Like he was he was always just the tiny one that everyone made fun of, and shock of all shocks, he's the one who has to save the day.
That's why, when you rescue a lot of the dragons, and a lot of times they're giving advice, and he doesn't really listen to a lot of them. Or
he's like, where's Nasty Nork? Let me at him. Yeah.
My favorite, I think one of them is that's like, Spyro, I've got a secret for you. If you press X at the top of your jump, and then everybody's like, "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me."
Your secret's safe with me. Let me get that out of the way right now. I'm so happy that they changed the Spyro's voice after this. I don't like it.
Oh, I love Spyro's voice.
See, I don't mind it, but I do prefer Tom Kenny.
Oh yes, I do prefer the Ripto's Rage and the Year of the Dragon Spyro. My least favorite right now is the guy who's doing the Reignited trilogy.
Really?
It's just Tom Kenny again.
He's doing slightly different voice on it. I do not like it as much.
Again,
it's not bad. It's just he does. I prefer the way he does the voice on Ripto and Year of the Dragon in the PS1 than what he would do later on. Some of that's probably just age, Tom Kenny's age.
Well, the dude's 61.
So some of that, some of that.
I also wonder if it has something to do with like, I don't know if bit crushing is the right term, but like the audio quality of the
wouldn't surprise me a bit.
PlayStation.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me a little bit.
Kind of that. Maybe it's like a nostalgia type thing associated with like the sound that the PlayStation was capable of that is nowhere near what it's capable of now.
Yeah, yep. Something I do kind of like about Spyro as a character. It's funny that he and Crash were so tied at the hip because they're polar opposite characters when you really look at it. Mm-hmm. Crash is a loony, zany son of a bitch. Mm-hmm. He goes around, he body slams people. He's always got a dumbass smile on his face unless he's afraid. He's the goofball. Spyro's a snarky asshole.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. Like, I always took it as he has been kind of picked on for his whole life, so he's just like all these people like, I knew you could do it, Spyro. And he's like, no, you fucking didn't.
Yeah, that's kind of
let me at him, yeah. That's what he sounds like to me.
And I love
That's
it.
what you sound like to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm kidding.
Damn.
I'm kidding.
Shots fired.
I'm kidding.
I know.
Something that I also really like for a platformer is that instead of putting a health bar necessarily on you, your health is determined by your dragonfly, Sparks. Mm-hmm. Who eats to get health back, you get butterflies. Obviously, there's some platforming that if you just fall off, you're going to die. The dragon, no matter how many health points you have, the dragonfly is not going to be able to save you.
Yeah,
but
this is the game where I learned that dragons can't swim.
It's very interesting.
Why do you think they're all so big? So they can just stand in the water.
Yeah, and also their wings get caught. But it's interesting in the Reignited trilogy. A lot of times when you fall in the water, he's still alive and he's just like nuts, like kind of like things like that. Like it's very interesting. He's not drowning, but yeah, in the old game, he's drowning.
Oh shit! Oh shoot!
He is very much drowning. But I always kind of liked the Sparks, the dragonfly, as a health barometer. versus, I think if they had just thrown, like, it's no different than having, like, hearts in Legend of Zelda or any of the, the watermelon in Donkey Kong Country 64,
Yeah.
It's no different than those, but I don't know, there's just something aesthetically pleasing to the Dragonfly being the health meter, because maybe it's just not on the screen, it's more of just, behind you.
Yeah. Man, I can't believe Dead Space ripped off Spyro the Dragon.
If I played Dead Space, I'd get that joke.
The health bar is the thing on his spine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I like that it's, it's nasty Nork, but people pronounce it Ganasty Ganork. It's just so fun. It's just so fun that people mispronounce it. Look, it's dumb English jokes, saying that, like, hey, the G in the N it makes an N sound, but we're not going to pronounce it that way.
No, you're not saying it right either. You got to say it like Spyro does. Nasty York.
Wow, Spyro's voice really. I did not expect for.
I genuinely felt nothing towards it. I like Tom Kenny better, but I didn't find it fucking obnoxious.
Yeah, I
don't know.
And maybe look, I'll say some of it maybe nostalgia. I grew up on it and everything like that. I've always loved Spyro's voice. So
I don't. It's not that I like hate the voice itself, but after a while, it just kind of got grating.
One of my other favorite things about the game is, and we're just kind of doing story stuff here on a lot of it, but certain dragons, when you rescue them and they're crystallized, they'll act like they've been doing stuff in the crystal. Like, they'll appear like they're cooking or they've been doing stuff and things like that. And you're like, did you get, like, in the crystal, were you in a different world? Like, were you, like, not... What exactly happened here and things like that?
The crystal acts like the lamp in Aladdin. Phenomenal cosmic power! Look at his face.
There's just a lot of silly, goofy things, which I think is one of the biggest strengths of Spyro. And I think that is the enemies.
Yeah.
Platformers. We recently played Wallace and Gromit. And for pretty good platforming, but kind of like the enemies around were kind of annoying.
And they're just robots.
Yeah, and things like that. The game, and again, like, different styles, so I'm not trying to say, like, that's necessarily a horrible thing for Wallace and Gromit, but, like, in this game, the enemies being just this goofy, ridiculous nature, the big guys just being like, you can't get me. You're not going to get these huge guys. Come close to me, and you just one little burn and they're dead. The fact that the majority of the Norks are actually scared of Spyro and they run away from you is actually really funny. That, like, oh yeah, they're like, you created me and you didn't give me any powers. I'm just a short little dude. What do you expect me to do?
It's almost got like the opposite thing of the Family Guy game, where it's every single character is just one hit and they die.
Well, that's how. I'm not gonna say that's how every platformer should be, because spoilers, Sly's not like that. And that's our next game. Spoilers, I guess. But when it comes to platformers like this, these open world kind of environments, I think one hit kills are the best for the pacing, because otherwise you just end up with a game where, like a lot of PS2 era games, and like Spyro himself would fall to in the PS2 era, where you just stop every couple minutes to just have a fisticuff.
And there are a few enemies. There are some obviously bosses take more than one hit and move on, but there are a few enemies that take 2 hits. There's in the ice level. There's guys with that have armor that slide on it that you have to charge and hit them twice to knock them off the edge. In Toasty, there are the shepherds that send the dogs. You have to burn them twice. Otherwise, they flatten you. So there are a few, but yeah, the majority are one hit. And some of it is like, all right, I have to figure out. I have to pay attention to the enemies and see, all right, is that something I can burn or charge? And they'll put those two together, and so you have to, like, which one do I attack first? All right, I have to do that. And then you'll get a little bit of variation of, wizards and different things that can do damage from long distance that'll help you. But I think what is cool is that every hub world and then every world as well has different enemies. They are unique and different depending on their surroundings. In the first world, they're just kind of Norks. In the second world, you get a lot more of the big hulking guys. You get kind of the potion ladies that slap you.
I forgot about those potion ladies. They're very
interesting. You get
potion lady. I'm going into battle, and I need your finest potions.
The thing that I love about those, specifically those ones, is that their slaps don't hurt you. They just send you flying, and if you're close to the edge, they
send you
send you flying. Like, yeah, I didn't take any damage, but I'm on the other side of the map now. What?
one of my favorite enemy things is that when you go into what is it? It's like the Peacekeepers
That's
world.
the second one, yeah.
Yeah, you go in and it's like a big dusty battlefield, and there are these giant cannons that are around that have like Gnorcs operating them and stuff. And if you kill a Gnorc that's operating a cannon, you can then take the cannon and push it around and use the fire, and it can shoot off the cannons.
And you can destroy chests. You can kill other Gnorcs. There are obstacles to break. It's very fun.
And
there are another version of cannons in the second to last world in the Dreamweaver's world that are used that send off magic beams that make things bigger and smaller.
Oh wow!
That are very similar. Those are really cool as well.
Which are a pain in the ass.
Yes.
For the most part, this game's perfectly fine and easy. I guess I won't say easy, but like fair.
Mm-hmm.
Those enemies are a fucking dick.
Dreamweavers is the one world where you get to it and you're like, oh. That's the difficulty.
Yeah, it's not even hard for me. It's more like, oh, god damn it. Like,
some of the hardness of this game also is optional. Like, because you're just needing to collect enough dragons, treasure, eggs to move on for the balloonist to move you on to the next world. You know, I think I beat the game at about 65% of all collectibles this time. So like you can get through the game pretty easily without collecting everything or doing things and still beat the game. But there's a lot of challenging things in trying to get all of it, and that is, I think, one of the great things about the game in general, and why I think I've played it for so much of my life, 25 years.
Wow.
Is that
tell me more, Grandpa?
Is that the game is you can get through it, and you can go through it, and you can win the game. But you can stick around and trying to perfect it, trying to find all the secrets, trying to figure out all the things, try to collect everything. There's a really good replayability element to it. And if the game sticks like it does with me, you're going to play it a bunch. But if it doesn't, it's okay. You can still play through it and still enjoy it without having that obsessive 100%ing nature.
right.
That's very fair. I think this game is fine. I don't think it's great or anything. I think if I played. Because
What a shock. Mason thinks a game is just fine. Put it on the bingo card, folks.
Put it on the bingo card.
Here's the thing. It's Spyro the Dragon is a great starting point, and that's really, I think, as far as it gets. I think if nothing else, this game makes me want to play other Spyro games. I don't think I would find myself going back to playing this one again. I definitely want to try out other Spyro
I would be
games.
interested to see you play the second and the third one. Because here's my opinion on it. And again, I have most of my Spyro stuff comes from playing the first game. I'm going to say that. That's the game that I've played. That's the one I've stuck to. That's why it's one of my all-time favorite games.
Right.
I think it's the best of the trilogy. I think it's the best Spyro game.
Wow.
So, and again, there are some people that do really like 2 and 3. 2 adds a couple of new characters that become really big in the universe. And they add more collectibles and a couple other things, but that's kind of the feel like it's kind of like the Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3 thing. Like, do they change up the formula very much? No, they just add a new collectible or a slightly new character, things like that, and it's kind of what the Spyro trilogy is.
It's very funny because you are the only person I've heard, and I've heard a lot of fucking people talk about 3D platformers. You are the only person I've heard who say, yeah, the first one's the best Spyro game.
Wow.
Yeah, that is what I've heard.
Wow. I've been just in different circles because I was like, I'm in the majority here because I've never heard anybody. Usually the people I talk to are like, yeah, the sequels are good, and I've heard a couple people who think Ripto is their favorite, and one person I've met who really likes Year of the Dragon, but almost everyone goes, yeah, the first one's the best.
Yeah, I've never heard
That's wild.
Different circles, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, here's the difference. You have actual friends.
Oof. Ouch.
But
it is kind of like hearing you say that that the first one is the best. It's kind of like it would kind of be the same of you saying that the first Crash Bandicoot is the best. Like that, it's a great starting point, but that's really all it is.
I think I do think the second Crash is slightly better, but I think the first one is better designed. It's just harder. There's my opinion.
Again, I just.
Well, I think what we're discovering here is that Shawn is a massive hipster.
Shawn's like, yeah, and see,
But yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for me to like the first game in a platforming trilogy. I think, again, I think, Jak and Daxter. Jak and Daxter is my favorite of the Jak trilogy.
For fuck's sake.
I think it's also the most whimsical, and I think that's why I appreciate it the most.
I was going to say, with Jak, it's genuinely more like, do you like the tone?
Yeah.
Because Jak 1 and Jak 2 alone are so fucking drastically different.
So different tone-wise.
Remember when Jak didn't talk? And then in Jak 2, his first words are, I'm going to kill Praxis.
Good God.
Yeah, Jak goes
dark.
Yeah, very, very quickly. And does, although, yeah, let's say, tangent on Jak and Daxter here, it does the edgy second game really better than almost any franchise has done. Yeah, because a lot of times the edgy is a response to stuff, a la like Prince of Persia. Mm-hmm. You're responding to something, you're trying to make it more to appease an audience, whereas Jak 2, legitimately, that makes sense for the story progression, and it like, Jak 2 makes sense that it would go darker after the first game. When you think a lot of it, like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense that that's where they went with it. But yeah, it is a tonal shift.
Yeah, I was gonna say it all depends. If you,
I'd like to imagine that because we're going through this whole thing of Shawn being like, I usually prefer the first game in a platforming franchise. Shawn's the type of guy to be like, yeah, the Mario games peaked with Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and it's all been downhill from here.
Not Mario Bros. 1, but Mario Bros. 3 you could fancy.
For the love of God.
But my favorite Mario Bros. Game actually came out on the Super Nintendo system. That's Yoshi's Island. So yes, 3 games later than it did.
I would be very curious. Again, spoilers. Next week is a Sly Cooper game. I would be very curious to see how you'd rank those games.
It's gonna be interesting because I'm gonna have to go through and play all of them again. I remember of them. I remember really liking Sly 3.
Oh.
But it was either 2 or 3 that were my favorites, if I remember right.
Well, 2 is the majority. I'm the weird fuck who has 3 as my favorite.
Mm-hmm. It was either 2 or 3, and I think that was very similar to kind of like what I said kind of about the Crash Bandicoot. Story-wise, I really love the first Sly Cooper, but mechanically they fix a lot of the mechanical stuff in 2 and 3 for the games, and I think that's why control-wise is why 2 and 3 stick better.
You could be even weirder and say Thieves in Time is your favorite.
Yeah, no, Thieves in Time is no one's favorite.
But I think that...
I got a whole tangent about that, but we'll go back.
That's next week.
Yeah.
I'll be yes.
I think the other thing for this is that, like, this is kind of a weird thing that is not around as often, is these, because the way platformers have changed over there, these big 3-4 game epic platforming stories.
Yes.
And all of them are still self-contained. You can play one Spyro game and you're fine. You don't necessarily need the same as you can play one Crash game and be fine. In those, but putting them all together, you have this cool story from it. Same with we get more with like the Ratchet and Clank games, which obviously have now gone way beyond 3. But and the Jak and Daxters and things like that.
It's mainly because the 3D platformer kind of died. It's not that they're not around anymore, but you mostly see them in indie circles and things like that. There is
Mario Galaxy killed the 3D platformer.
Yeah, there is.
Whoa.
There is, like, recently, Mario is the only one who's been, like, really big into 3D platforming. Mm-hmm. You could argue Sonic Frontiers, but Frontiers kind of goes in a whole new direction.
Yeah.
You could argue Crash 4, but Crash 4 came out a couple years ago. Other than those big franchises, and Ratchet and Clank, but Ratchet and Clank has more and more focus on the gunplay with a little platforming.
It's moved more to third-person shooter than with platforming elements.
Yeah, but there is...
Platforming elements?
Ah,
gotcha.
But...
like earth, water, fire,
air. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony. And everything changed when Mario Galaxy attacked.
Hold on. I want you to elaborate on that statement you made about Mario Galaxy.
Mario Galaxy, in a lot of ways. No, this is not. We've talked before about it. Mario Odyssey is fantastic, and it takes a lot of stuff and things like that. Mm-hmm. Galaxy, in a lot of ways, is the perfection of the 3D platformer. It is the perfection, and from that point, people trying to go beyond it or things like that, it has been a struggle to actually try to find platformer that is at Mario what they did in that game. In a lot of ways, they perfected the platformer.
So it's the peak of all platforms.
Yeah, it killed it because it was so good.
It's the peak.
And I think there's an element to that. Also, I think 3D platforms a lot of times were licensed material, as we've seen, and as less and less licensed game, less and less 3D platformers.
Yeah, because another big quote unquote 3D platformer recently was SpongeBob: The Cosmic Shake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the Cosmic, whatever.
Cosmic Shake. That's whatever
it is. But yeah, going back to Spyro, it kind of is. Spyro is a very interesting game because, like I said, I got my big 3D platformer list. I can check it off now. And overall, Spyro is one of those games where I don't love it per se. I'm kind of along the sides of Mason. I think it's better than fine. I think it is a very, very good damn game. But for me, it's kind of like I'm interested in the sequels because I don't know. I just never really clicked with Spyro 1. I could acknowledge that it was a fantastically designed game, very well paced. I think it's a very charming game. But for the most part, just something about the game didn't click for me, except for one level. One level that made me go, yeah, this game's fucking peak now, and it's in the final world.
Twilight Harbor?
Twilight Harbor.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about that world. Maybe it's the fact that there's a bunch of Norks running around with fucking guns blasting at your ass. Maybe it's that there are these enemies with metal barrels that you have to hit the metal barrels back at them and knock them the fuck
barrels
out.
Is what
knock them. Twilight Harbor was the level where I was like, oh, this shit's rad. I love this shit.
I love the thing about Twilight Harbor and those last two worlds before you get to Nasty Nork is those two worlds are less about creating necessarily new bad guys. It's more of like putting Norks in like doing cooler things, and because the final world is more technological based. Nasty Nork lives on, it's an island. It's a little island. The hub world is literally just a circle in the middle of the and there with 4 doors. So like it's not like anything. It's the smallest hub world by far.
I was gonna say it's just a room, basically.
But all the levels are more technological based, as Thomas mentioned with Nasty Nork, the final boss. It is you're having to collect keys to unlock doors to go through things, which is something that has not been in the game previous to like actually have to do that. Like you collect keys, but those are for treasure chests. It adds a different element to it, and some of it I wonder if some of those. I don't know the development, and I haven't seen it there. I wonder if they maybe had one more world planned that they ended up backing off on, and that's kind of what became Nasty's world around it.
I think there's a significant possibility of that. I personally kind of like that every other hub world is so bright and colorful and so wide open. Here, it's constrained, it's tight, it's dark, and it's like, oh, this is where the bad guy lives. Now, Nasty Nork is not exactly fucking Darth Vader or whatever, but I think it does make his presence a bit more like fearful.
And I think of the Spyro villains, Nasty Nork is the most well-known of the bad guys. I think of the 3.
Yeah, I'd argue Ripto.
Ripto is probably... It's either him or Ripto, but,
No one remembers the chick from 3.
No, nobody does. And then... Although I'm pretty sure she comes back in some of the later... At least in some of the other games, but I could be wrong.
I think so. I know Ripto comes back.
Ripto does. And Nasty... Did Nasty come back in Skylanders is the only place he appeared? I think that's the only place he appeared. I think.
Yeah, that's all you.
I could be wrong because I have not really played Skylanders. But again, I think
I like superchargers.
the thing about the all of that is that it definitely every hub world, especially from that, every world is very different, which is something really unique. Honestly, in platformers, like it's unique in any game is when you get that difference across the board.
Yeah, it's also kind of interesting that there are several hub worlds. Like normally there's just one, and again going back to Mario 64, there's usually just like one, and you go to different like sections of it to unlock different levels. But here it's just the one. So
it takes a lot of the things that I think maybe look, and I'm going to fully admit. Unlike you guys, I played this game when I was 10, and so there's definitely going to be a nostalgia based attached to this playing this game over and over and over again, pre-13-year-old, and having an attachment to it.
I was going to say, there's a big difference between first playing the game when you're 10 and being like me and first playing the game when you're 20 fucking 5.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
There's going to be a difference on that, but there was definitely something for when playing it of going like, oh, okay, I understand this platforming. I understand how to do this. I'm good. You know, I've 100%ed Spyro the Dragon. Mason mentioned in Clash of Ninjas, like I have to give points to a game that I'm good at, and that's going to be Spyro for me. There is an element of like I'm good at this platformer, so like. Whereas there are many platformers I am not good at, and so like there is that element to it as well that I will fully admit that has kind of built my bias maybe on it as well.
That's
That's the difference between, for me with platformers, I am the guy who, if I'm not good at it, I slap myself in the face and I'm like, get good, you stupid slut.
But
I can definitely see how this would appeal to like a younger person.
Well, I mean, I can imagine if I had played this game when I was young, if I was into Spyro when I was a kid, I'd love the shit out of this. Spyro has never really, for me, Spyro has never really been that interesting to me. And I don't know why, because overall it's a very good franchise for the first 3 games. And
I think post the first,
5.
some of that might also be because post the first 3 games, the story and Spyro kind of fades. And Spyro it's not that Spyro isn't still a popular character. But after Year of the Dragon and when it became they started doing the Spyro Cross Crash games and on the the Game Boy and then the GameCube 360 series, it just Spyro and even Ripto and Year of the Dragon did not sell as well as this one. This is the big Spyro selling game.
Really?
This is the game that sold. This is the game that did well.
Wild to me. That's wild to me.
Ripto is probably, I think, on par. I think if I remember right, and I didn't see the numbers between all 3 of them, I believe Year of the Dragon is the low one of the 3 in the sales.
I think you're right.
Ripto was on par. And again, it's not that they changed things up. It is that Ripto and Year of the Dragon are different mechanically.
Yeah. Which, again, I'm curious to try them. I'm going to take a wild guess and say I'll probably like them more because when it comes to 3D platformers, I tend to prefer sequels unless they are just very wildly different. Hey, know that Gex 1 is a fucking 2D platformer?
Yeah.
I think I remember
It's
you
wild.
telling us that. So,
do not ask me why I know too much about Gex.
So Thomas brought up the thing that made him go, "Oh, this is really great," and it kind of reminded me of the thing for me that kind of elevated this from being like, "Oh, this is just kind of this is a fine game," to being like, "Oh, I can actually see where this kind of like started something," and that was the music. My God, the music is amazing.
Composed by Stuart Copeland,
He's a drummer of a little known English band. You might have heard of them. They're called The Police.
Yeah. And something really cool in the Reignited trilogy is that you can turn... You can still listen to the music, and the music in the Reignited trilogy is still very, very similar. It's just a little... They do a little bit of, like... Sometimes it's lower volume and some things like that. But you can just play straight whatever would be the classic music at any point. And I tend to play that way.
That's fair.
For it. Guys, I love this game. I'm going to be honest. I love this game. I think... even the things that maybe are frustrating or you're bashing your head against the wall, flight levels can be really frustrating at times.
See,
But I love them.
I didn't find the flight levels that hard. They were just one of those things where I'm like, oh, okay, I
gotta find the pattern, gotta figure it out.
The thing that pissed me off was like those levels where like you'd have to platform while you're supercharged.
Okay, so like treetops, Wizard Peak. No, not Wizard Peak.
No, Wizard Peak was fine because it's literally you supercharge and then you just turn right.
Yeah, not Wizard Peak. It's the other one in the Magic Crafters that you have to go through and kill the spiders.
You have to go through, kill the spiders, and then do this fucking Fast and Furious Vin Diesel ass ramp over this barrel bullshit.
But when you land it, when you go high, and when you hit the button at the right time, my God, yeah, you are.
Oh yeah, you soar on that son of a bitch. But I'm also like, I hit the wall and I'm fuck, And
Damn.
At least they don't let in the treetops. They absolutely let you die, and boy, that level can be really frustrating. In my opinion, that is the hardest level in the game to complete because there's just so many weird things that you have to figure out all the puzzles and everything around it, and catching the thieves and all the different things, and flying long range. But the Magic Crafters level where you do, at least they are like, we're not going to let you die.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm fine with that. It's just, I'm not going to say it was badly designed or whatever. It was more me being dumbass. It was frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Again,
absolutely.
That is just me being dumb. That is just me being bad. That is not a problem the game has.
And then when you do complete 100%, the final world, you collect the last 2,000 gems, I think it is.
Yeah, you rob Nasty's grave.
Yeah, you go to the last area, and it's a flight level, and you collect everything. And you finish it off.
You just rob the shit out of Nasty.
Which it's a really fun last
Nasty
world. So
whatever.
I think this level. The thing I like is the game has a lot of variation, a lot of playing, a lot of different things you can do. It is a collectible game, which too many collectibles can be annoying. But I think it toes that line of just having the right amount of collectibles.
DK. Too much shit.
But just all the Donkey Kong games. Eventually, you're like, how many coins do I have to get? Why do I? Okay, collectibles, sure. But I think it toes that line well. While the camera being mapped to the L2 and R2 buttons is from a modern look at it a little weird to go back into and things like that. But the camera for a wide open platformer is really, really good.
Yeah, the camera's pretty good. It's probably one of the best 3D platformer cameras on the PS1. Arguably the best, because the only other options are like Gex, where it's fine, or shit like Rascal, where fuck me.
Because you really don't control the camera in the Crash Bandicoot games, so
no.
It definitely is one of the considering how many bad platforming cameras would come after it, I really, really do appreciate that bit of the game. Mm-hmm. But on this podcast, we ask 2 important questions of every game that we play. The first one is, how does it hold up?
I think it holds up pretty well. Mm-hmm. Like,
No, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
I'll wait my turn. I will wait my turn.
I think the game holds up fine. Yeah, graphically, obviously, it's not great, but I think
1998 PlayStation game.
With me, the PS1 graphics are also charming. Mm-hmm. In that way, they look like so fucking stupid and stretchy. It's funny.
I think some of that. I said I'm playing the Reignited trilogy as well because I'm just in a mood because of all this. And while I like a lot of the updated designs of the enemies and they look better, I really love some of their goofiness in the old graphics. I love that, like, the weirdly defined Norks that jump in the tent, and then when you burn the tent, moon you, that you can't really tell what they're doing because it's just, they're square ass cheeks, It's
But yeah, I think the game holds up pretty well. I think for a PS1 platform, the controls are pretty good.
Mm-hmm. There's some things definitely with the controls that are hit and miss on it, but I think overall, the controls really have held up and are again, you wouldn't map them the way you would now, but for the time and how they are, then they still work really well. So
the controls have aged great. I will say that the controls are, especially for a first attempt, it's really, really satisfying to play.
Some of it is also, you think if their first game was a first-person shooter. And at the time, you would map a lot of controls. Again, a lot of the controls control more like a first-person shooter with the way it is, but in third person.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think the PlayStation 1, I think like most PS1 games have aged like dog shit. Hey, where'd that red dot come from? Yeah!
Sorry.
Visually, I think they've aged like dog shit.
Sorry.
No, you're
Not
fine.
really.
But I disagree.
Yeah,
I mean, yes, there is some elements, but it's not trying to look realistic, so I don't think it has aged poorly visually. Like, I think
if this was like Metal Gear Solid, we were talking about, yeah, it looks like dog shit.
like,
but
I can understand that playing the Phantom Menace. Like, I can understand that when you're like, the blocky humans, or even like Tomb Raider.
For me, the thing that makes the graphics have aged fine is that it's a cartoony, it's expressive.
Yeah, it's the same way with Crash Bandicoot. I think
thing.
they both have aged. Their graphics look great. Well, they were good at the time. They look fine now. I think they aged just fine. I think overall, like, yeah, can you tell it's a PlayStation 1 game? Yeah, but it's not like awful graphics. All the environments actually look decent. You can interact with the environments in this game. Like, you can burn things, that you can light campfires, you can there's lots of environments you can interact with and things like that. So like, no, I think this game is aged graphically quite well for what it is, and I think some of that also is the lighting. We talked about it in the Wallace and Gromit game, which would come on the next platform system cycle, and they didn't like that game as well, and so that actually was something for not holding up on it. This game is lit very well.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's just very polygonal.
Yeah, the PlayStation.
Mason, you were born in 2003.
I was.
Yeah, 5 years after this game.
Yeah.
That's the 64 and the PlayStation and the Dreamcast and some of the PS2. That's very much, and some of the GameCube. You would still.
They didn't all right, here's my kind of hot take. That's not at all a hot take. They didn't get graphics nailed down until 2010, maybe.
Middle to late PS3, Xbox 360s when they really started to get realistic. When they started to get realistic down.
Yeah, because even going back to like Uncharted 1, it looks fine, but then you look at some of the details and it's like, that is murky as shit. Like,
yeah, definitely.
So what you're saying is I've been spoiled by
yes,
good-looking games.
Yes, you're going back. It's the
because you're a fucking toddler.
it's not that different from when we talked about Arcade's Revenge. You're coming back from a mindset that is quite a bit beyond what that style and things like that. So I can understand why you'd be like, well, that style was old by the time I was playing games, so I can understand that. It's like if you were watching a black and white film. You're like, oh, thanks. But like somebody who grew up in it's like, yeah, I understand that color looks better, but I grew up in this, it's fine.
It's like I have the same thing when I try to watch anything pre-1980 when it comes to movies. There's only like one or two that I can think of that have actually three, four. There's a couple that I can think of that I've hit.
And here's me just
majority of those.
And here's me just casually being like, ooh, movie that came out in 1974.
Yeah.
I like old shit.
Same. But that, we'll get there with Mason. We'll get him there. But overall, I think
I'm making you watch a black and white movie for the fucking podcast eventually.
I think just in the end, like of all of us, this is one of the best aged PS1 games in my opinion. I don't know if it's the best. I think there's a few other, but like PS1 has a lot of rougher aging games, same as we said with the 64 and the PlayStation 1, because of graphic capability, things like that. But sometimes what they were trying to do, the aging curve is a lot more. This game ages really well.
Okay.
Our second question that we normally ask is about a remake and a reimagining. Well, this game's already gotten a remake and a reimagining.
I was gonna say,
I was honestly thinking about. I was like, what are we gonna say?
So
I was really hoping Shawn just asked the question as is, because I was gonna have a whole bit where I was like, it'd be really great if they took all three games, put them in a package, redid the graphics, redid the voices,
maybe reignited some things.
Yeah, maybe call.
Hey, that's a great name.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe they should do that.
So I think simply a very simple question to end this will be, and this is more me asking you guys: would you like to play more in this franchise?
Yes, absolutely. Just because I want to see what more they can do with this, because that was my big takeaway from this game, is that it feels
basic. Like a first game.
It felt like a first game, which is fine. But I want to play more. I want to see where Spyro goes with this.
Yeah, I'm also gonna add this comment because this was another thing that I was gonna say. If Shawn asked remaster or remake, obviously they've already gotten the remakes. Crash has gotten the fork. Just give Spyro his.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not asking for a world-changing thing, but, you know, Crash has gotten his fourth game. He's gotten a fucking team-based multiplayer sports game now.
Hell, he's had 2 fourth games.
Yeah, so just give Spyro his. Well, I mean, Spyro's already had 1 fourth game, but, you know, so... Yeah,
Spyro had... The thing interesting with Spyro, unlike like Crash Bandicoot, that was kind of more like individual games afterwards, Spyro had a full trilogy that came, you know...
Well, Spyro...
You know, and then...
It's very interesting, because Spyro literally had his trilogy, 2 games that followed on from that trilogy, a new trilogy, Skylanders Reignited. That is Spyro's legacy.
Whereas, like, Crash Bandicoot has gone, you know, a long time. Skylanders kind of kept Spyro alive in a lot of ways.
Well, it kept him alive, but in a way also kind of killed him because
Yes.
he ended up not being the focus for a long time.
I was going to say, it was called Skylander Spyro's Adventure, and then that quickly was negated.
So it was kind of, it was both a positive that Spyro existed, and it was a negative in that from that point on, the interest in Spyro maybe dipped a bit. But again, the Reignited trilogy did really well. But it was only made after the success of the Insane trilogy. So once again, Spyro going on the coattails of Crash. Wow. But I would love to see more Spyro games made. I would love to see them maybe do more in the original style type of games. You know, a 4th game like they did with Crash Bandicoot.
They just make another Reignited trilogy, but it's The Legend of Spyro. God damn it!
All right, okay. I know this would never happen in a million years, but you know what I want the next Spyro game to be like? I want it to be like Conker's Bad Fur Day.
You just want Spyro to say the fuck words.
I do. No. I don't want Spyro to say the fuck words. I want everyone around him to say the fuck words. So then Spyro being like, "Oh, my baby ears."
No, see, the difference is they would be the one being like, "Oh, sorry, Spyro, let me cover your ears," and he's like, "No, f that. I'm gonna go do my own thing, and I'm gonna go burn things." And one thing that is cool about
I want to turn Spyro into a little gremlin.
See, I feel like Spyro would be the guy who, like, I forget what it is. I think it's a Looney Tunes bit where Bugs Bunny gets into a scenario and he knows it's stupid, but he looks at the camera for like a split second, like with a look that this is stupid and you know it, but I have to go along with it anyway because it's in the contract. That's what I imagine Spyro doing.
Yeah. There are things from this franchise, and I would love to see it continued. But what do you guys think? What's your favorite Spyro game? What's your favorite platformer from that PlayStation era?
What's your favorite dragon?
That's true. What's your favorite dragon?
Because we went on that tirade beforehand.
Let us know. Send us an email to bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. We'll read off any emails here on any episodes. bleepyouplaying@gmail.com. Or, you know, maybe you want us to play one of those PlayStation platformers. Maybe you want us to play Spyro on the Game Boy. Well, you can tell us to do that by subscribing over on our Patreon, patreon.com/whatthebleep, our super bleephead tier. $15 a month, and you can tell us to play a game, and we'll do it. Subscribe over there and let us know that. And we'll be back next time to finish off our series. We've already told you, it's Sly 3. We'll see you next time.
I was going to say, we already said it.
I liked it.